Hi, this is Colin Sandberg, coach at the Endurance Collective, and I'm here to give you some quick tips on how to use Zwift to help you with your training. I'm not going to be talking about Zwift racing here, and I'm also not going to be talking about the more general debate on indoor riding versus outdoor riding and what balance to strike between the two. Ben and I are going to be covering those things shortly on Versus. I'm not going to be talking about indoor training setups, equipment recommendations, and such. There are a lot of people that I'm sure you can find that know that stuff way better than I do. What I am going to be talking about is how to use Zwift to get better quality training. I do want to mention that I am assuming you're using Zwift with a smart trainer. You can still use Zwift with a dumb trainer, but some of the options, some of the things I'm going to mention here today are not going to be applicable to you. So let's get into it. Generally, I will say I recommend a polarized training model for most athletes that in a nutshell means that you keep your easy days easy and your hard days hard. Your easy days, which represent as a rule of thumb, 5 out of 7 days a week, might be endurance, might be recovery, might be some sort of technique workout that's generally low intensity but could be challenging in other ways, or it could be just a day off. So first, let's talk about endurance rides. You have a few good options here using Zwift. First one is just hop into Zwift and ride. Keep your heart rate in zone 2. And of course, you don't want to get sucked into trying to chase people down. You will not be the fastest rider on Zwift, so you got to let it go. You've got to have some discipline here. You might form into some little groups at times, and that's great. But if you start getting competitive with that stuff, you'll get yourself into trouble really fast in terms of trying to do a proper endurance ride. So go and explore new worlds. You see that on any day you have Watopia available, you have all of these routes and they have the statistics there. And then you'll have 2 guest worlds at any given time and the routes there. There will not be quite as many route options on any of these guest worlds. And then you can look at the guest world schedule over here. Right now it's February. And just pick one and ride, explore the new routes. I would say also that every time you complete a new route, you will get an XP or experience point bonus, and that'll allow you to level up faster. The faster you level up, the more bikes you unlock and different kits and equipment, wheels and such. So some of that is just style. Some of that will actually help you go faster. I believe as of today, as of February of 2021, there are 80 routes that you can complete. So you can make a little game out of it and try to do each one. Obviously, some are more difficult than others. The second option here is you can join a group ride. I think the easiest way to do this is on the Zwift Companion app. And if you click on the events tab, you'll see a list of events. Usually there's something happening every 5 to 15 minutes. Some are races, some are group workouts, some are group rides. You can also look at it here on Zwift in the upper right-hand corner, upcoming events. And you can see how many people are entered, if in each of the categories, if there are categories for that. We're talking about endurance here. You're going to need to know approximately what kind of watts per kilo you ride at your endurance pace. For instance, if you know you usually ride at 150 to 200 watts in your zone 2 and you weigh 165 pounds, which is 75 kilos, then you're going to want something in the range of 2 to 2.7 watts per kilo. Couple things to keep in mind here. First of all, recognize that even though Zwift is a video game, these are real people you're riding with, and just like in real life, they're going to get competitive at times. You can't always control that. Some people are going to treat even something like an endurance ride as a race. So don't get sucked into that. Some people are going to shoot off right from the front, and some people might try to go with him just to try to stay at the front. They don't want to get left behind. Or also, this is really common, just like in real life group rides. Some people just go crazy on all the hills. So if you're doing a proper endurance ride, you got to stay disciplined about this, especially if you're taking this this approach to it, jumping in one of these group rides and trying to use it as an endurance ride. Now, some of these rides have what they call fencing, where if you get too far ahead, they'll say drop back to the leader. Some of them have what they call rubber banding, which will effectively keep people together unless you completely stop pedaling and fall off the back, or you just sprint off the front. Most of the rides will have a given leader, and it should be pretty easy to see who that is. You want to stay close to them as a rule of thumb, and you don't need to stay right next to them, which can be very hard to do if it's a large group. But kind of keep them in sight, not too far ahead, not too far behind. And again, keep your heart rate in zone 2. Most important thing in my book about doing a proper endurance ride is keep your heart rate in zone 2. If it's too hard, drop out, choose something different. If it's too easy, drop out, choose something different. But don't get sucked into treating it like a race. If you want to do a race, do a race. Don't turn an endurance ride into a race. And if you want to do intervals, do intervals. Same thing. Don't ruin somebody else's group ride. So you can do intervals. Now, third option that I really like, and I've talked about this a little bit before, is the pace partners option. So you'll see on here right now, it's just in Watopia. If I click on pace partners, you have different levels of pace partners based on watts per kilo, and they're riding different routes here, generally fairly flat routes. What you want to do as a rule of thumb is choose the one that's going to allow you to ride at your endurance pace, or ride at a pace that will not get you over that zone 2 heart rate. You can stay with that pack. Generally, the largest packs are going to be in the B and C groups. And this has a couple advantages because it's a little bit less steady state, most likely, than riding on your own. Also, because you're riding with a pack, you're going to go faster. You're going to pick up experience points faster. And there's also a drop multiplier. So you'll get drops a little bit faster based on how long you stay with the pace partner. And that will allow you to accumulate drops, which is the virtual currency that Zwift uses to purchase new equipment. So it can be a fun way to do things. Although if you're doing a particularly long endurance ride, it might start to get boring. I've also heard a lot of people complain that they're sort of in between these levels. Maybe they're trying to do an endurance ride, and like the C level cadence is a little bit too hard, and the D level is a little bit too easy. Hopefully, over time, they refine this a bit, and they create more of these maybe in between C and D, in between B and C, and in different worlds besides Watopia. But this is what we have for now. I kind of like it. So that is it for endurance. For recovery rides, I'm not going to say a whole lot on this, but you can basically follow all these same options, except that you want to keep your heart rate in zone 1 as opposed to in zone 2. Only other thing I would mention about recovery rides that you might want to keep in mind is you might want to use a little bit of extra care in selecting flatter courses, because just like in real life, and there's too many hills, that means either you're going to go too hard, turns into not really a recovery ride, or kind of grinding up every hill at a really low cadence, going to cause a little bit more muscle damage, probably not ideal for a recovery ride. So those are your options for easy days, which, like I said, rule of thumb in a polarized plan is going to be about 5 out of 7 days per week. Now let's talk about those other 2 days, the intensity days. There's a lot of different types of intensity, but I generally, with my coached athletes, like to start with longer, more moderate intensity intervals and work up to higher intensity, shorter intervals as we get closer to a peak period. So, talking about using Zwift, few ways to do these intervals. The default is going to be, just choose a route and go ride here. But if you look in this ride type, if I click on training, I have a list of workouts here. Now, the Zwift library over time has really grown. There's a lot of workouts in here, and it can be a little bit confusing. There's a few ways to do this. If you are a real beginner and you're just trying to choose what to do, you might want to choose kind of where you're at. Say, oh, this looks good. 10 to 12 week FTP builder. I want to build my FTP in the off season, or I've got a race coming up. I've got to sort of cram for baby on board as is geared towards pregnancy. There's Zwift Academy plans, GCN plans, building up to a century, and that there's also, if you click on this plans tab, a lot of different training plans that'll be based on sort of what level you're at, what you're training for, how many weeks you have, how much time you have. So you could choose those. Now, so I think it's fairly cut and dry there. I will say, of course, I'm biased as a coach, where I think you'll get a lot more out of having a coach that can prescribe you specific workouts based on your needs, your strengths and weaknesses. But I'm also of the opinion that any plan is, even a cookie cutter plan, is better than no plan, because you can at least evaluate that afterwards and say, this is what went well and didn't go well. I will just say that having looked over a lot of these sort of cookie cutter Zwift plans, in my opinion, a lot of them have more intensity than I would prescribe. But if you're just getting started, could be a great way to start. Second option here would be to create your own workout. And I'm going to mention now that I'm doing this on a Mac. I know that a lot of people use Apple TV for their Zwifting, and in terms of building workout, that's going to be different, but this is how you would do it on a Mac or a PC. You have these custom workouts, and I can go in and I can click on create a new workout. I think this is fairly user friendly here, but what I could do, let's just make up a simple workout. I can click on warm up, which is a ramp up here. The default is going to be 25%, ramping up to 25 to 75% of FTP within 10 minutes. Now, personally, I think 25% is a little bit low to start, so let's just click and drag that up to 50%, ramping up to 75% at the end of 10 minutes. Now let's say I want to throw in some intervals. Default is going to be 4 times 1 minute interval with 5-minute recovery. Let's just take a simple workout. Let's do 5 by 5 minute. So what I can do here is I can lengthen that to about 5 minutes. There we go. Okay, that's 5. Oh, got it. Okay, 501. And let's say I want to do that at, the default is 75% of threshold. I want to raise that to 100%, right exactly at FTP. And there we go. And then I want to do 5 of these, not 4. So I'm just going to hit the plus button, and there we go. We got 5 by 5 minutes at FTP. Couple other things I can do here. I can specify a cadence here by clicking and dragging the cadence icon in there, and I can put, let's say I want to change that to 95 RPM during the on intervals, and I'm going to change this to 85 RPM in the recovery intervals there. I can also use this, which is a text event. This is something I might use if I'm making this workout public for other people. It might be just sort of a motivational thing. Come on, you got this, 1 more interval to go. Or it might be something where I give more of an explanation on why somebody's doing these intervals, what the value might be. Or it might be something that I could put in and say, last 30 seconds of this interval, stand up out of the saddle. Something like that I wouldn't be able to specify another way in these intervals. For now, I think I'm just gonna click on this and drag it away. And then I can put a cooldown here. This is going to be a mirror of the warm-up. Again, let's raise this 25% up to 50%. So we're cooling down, starting at 75% of threshold, down to 50% now. And now I've got a workout here, and as you'll see, one of the nice things is you have the stress points, which is approximately TSS, if you're familiar with that. If you're not familiar with that term, don't worry about it. Just realize that it's a general measure of the training stress of the workout. Harder it is, the more training stress. And I will also mention this one other thing here, which is the free ride that I could click and drag in there. That looks a little bit weird. So just to give a little bit of explanation, the default for these workouts using the Smart Trainer is going to be erg mode. Erg mode, if you don't know about it, it is basically enforcing the power that you have for any interval setting. So here we have these on interval set at 100% of threshold, and we've said try to do these at 95 RPM. So basically, if you're just pedaling along at 95 RPM, it's going to add or take away resistance to keep you at right at threshold. And if your RPM goes down, it's going to add a little bit more resistance. If your RPM goes up, it's going to take it away. It's going to keep you pretty much locked in there. People have mixed opinions on this. Personally, I really like them, especially for sustained periods of moderate to moderately high intensity. I think it tends to not work quite as well with the low intensity and with the really high intensity stuff. But there's times when you just want to lock it in at that power, keep pedaling, listen to your music, listen to your podcast, watch your TV show, and not really have to worry about it. Just let the trainer add or take away resistance. The downside of it that a lot of people might have is you cannot take a break. If you slow down your pedaling, it's going to enforce that wattage, and it'll bog you down pretty quickly. If you're doing a really hard interval, you may find that you get bogged down and it just, you can never really come back from that. So the other option there that you have, still using this workout function in Zwift, is to have a free ride section. This would be sort of like just an old school dumb trainer where you're controlling the power by which gear you're in and how fast you're pedaling. So two things. You want to put more power down, you either spin faster or you put it in a harder gear, and vice versa. This could be useful in a workout too, where you might want to have a combination of erg mode and free ride mode. So a couple examples, if you have some technique sections of a workout, you have some fast cadence or some one-legged drills in there, you might not want to specify a specific wattage. Or if you're doing a field test, you might say, I've got a really specific warm-up that I want to do on using erg mode, and then I've got 20 minutes free ride where I'm going as hard as I can. I don't know exactly what power that's going to be. We'll see what I can do. And also for really high intensity stuff like sprints, you're not necessarily specifying I'm trying to hit 300% or 400% of threshold. You might just go for it all out for 20 seconds or so. So you might want a combination. That's what that's for. Now for this workout, I might just go in here and name this before I save it. Let's just name it something simple like 5 by 5 min FTP. And I can save it, and then it's going to go right into my workout library right here. And you can choose to do that. You can also click this slider if I want to raise or lower my threshold setting, and you can do that in game. You can change the bias. The default is 100%. But if you're feeling really good, you can bump that up, I believe, to 110%. Or if you're not feeling good, you're not feeling like you're having a great day, then you can lower that to something like 90%. And I can work out. When you're using these workouts, it doesn't really matter which course you're on, so to speak. Okay, now I will also mention, like I said before, that if you look in the organized events, there will be some of these are actual workouts. So here you're going to get the benefit of doing a workout with a group that everybody's doing the same thing together. Misery loves company and so forth. The downside of that is just that you're not really going to have a lot of options in terms of the workouts. It's just this is what workout whatever group is doing at this specific time, and you can jump in to that. Now, finally, I will mention one other way. I'm going to hit clear here. I will mention one other way that you could do interval workouts, which kind of mimics how most people probably do them on the road, is that you identify a certain stretch of road or a climb that's going to take about the right amount of time. So, for example, let's stick with the 5 minute intervals. I know on Watopia that the the Titans Grove KOM is 1.6 miles and 2.2 average gradient. So for me personally, that's going to take about 5 minutes at around my threshold, maybe just a little bit less. But you've got a couple advantages to doing it this way as opposed to like on an erg mode in an organized workout. First, it's going to be more realistic. You have to shift, you have to change your cadence, you have to pay attention to the road. That can be a good thing in terms of preparing you. Second, you're not locked into a specific power. You are using how hard you're pushing, how fast you're pedaling, what gear you're in to control that. And you might feel good on one day, you might not feel so good on another day. It's just a bit more realistic. It allows you to use that sense of perceived exertion a little bit more. And finally, you're doing it by distance, not or time, not by an exact power. So you can play with the pacing. You can see, oh, I'm feeling behind schedule. I'm going to push it a little bit hard at the end, or I'm going to push it at the beginning. You can try in the saddle, out of the saddle, all these things. Going to make it feel a little bit more realistic. Okay, so that's it for the workouts. But I will also mention that there are times when you want to do a high intensity session that's a little bit less structured. This would kind of be like jumping into your local group ride or local fast training race. So you've got a few options. One, you just ride on your own, pick a hard course, and go hard on the climbs, for instance. Looking at some of these courses here, Four Horsemen is one that includes a number of really hard climbs here. Let's see, Quatch Quest, the Mega Pretzel, the Uber Pretzel, the regular pretzel, all of these sort of, maybe this is really just going up Alp to Zwift, but something like these pretzel rides, you have numerous long, hard climbs, and it could be a good semi-unstructured way to go and do your workout if you need that at times. You can also jump into a race or a group ride. Now, those are going to have different dynamics as opposed to a race versus a group ride, but you can bet that most of the group rides, unless they have a pretty low specified watts per kilo, they'll be competitive at least at the front end. Just like if you did a Grand Fondo, it may not be a race per se, but you know that at the pointy end, it's going to be kind of competitive. So, and you can use that on its own as sort of an unstructured way of doing a high intensity workout, or you could add it on after your intervals. You jump in a short race, or maybe we're talking about that 5 by 5 minute interval session. Maybe you say, I'm just going to do 4 and then I'm going to do a short race afterwards to sort of see how I feel. Lots of ways to work it in. I generally do recommend that people try to limit the number of those fast group rides and training races because they're not really specific to you, but it is nice to do from time to time, either because you need the competitiveness or because you want something that feels a little bit more race specific. So that's a brief rundown on using Zwift as a training tool. Hopefully this helped you. Please like and subscribe. Use your question, write your questions or comments in the comment section. Thank you.